Hello and welcome back to Peeling Back the Mask. I'm your host, Jason Davis. And off the top, I want to let you know I have a new channel on a different platform than YouTube. It's called Odyssey, Odyssee, under the name The Autistic Tuber. So if you're not a big fan of YouTube, you can go there and check out my videos. This will be the first one because it doesn't let me transfer all my videos from YouTube because I don't have enough subscribers. So we'll see how long this is because first it's been, my daughter wasn't in school. We just got her into kindergarten. So I've got 3 hours now to do some podcasting, whatever else I need to do. And but we've also got some construction going on in the house. So we're remodeling. I think I mentioned I am now an officially licensed psychologist. And my wife is a doctor, so we decided that we're going to put in an office for patients downstairs, and so we're doing that remodeling and some other stuff. So the noise has been difficult to deal with, and makes it kind of hard to do any kind of podcast. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things today, but the first one is hypocrisy and everything that's going on in the world today. Something that really, really bothers me is bothering me, constantly bothering me, is the hypocrisy of mainly the United States government and other governments around the world, and the reaction to Russia right now. Now, before you start going, you're pro-Russian or you're pro-war, I'm not for any war. What I am for is honesty and that everyone's held to the same standards. So, for example, when the United States attacked Iraq, citing that there were weapons of mass destruction, nobody said anything. So they went in, they killed thousands of people, they destroyed the country basically. There are no sanctions against the U.S. There ended up not being any kind of weapons of mass destruction, and nobody said anything. The United States wasn't held accountable for the lies and the lives that they took. Then we go to Afghanistan, where they killed children, and everyone's just like, eh. And something that came out in the news the other day was they were kind of comparing brown lives to white lives. You know, there's this mass hysteria right now over people being killed in Ukraine on both sides, Ukrainian and Russians, and but there was no worldwide outcry against the United States bombing hospitals, schools, drone strikes on children where they killed 10 children. Or 10 people, sorry, I think there were 8 children in that family. And nobody said anything. But Russia decides to make an offensive after months and months of prodding by the United States and the European Union and Britain. And the reasons for it have been completely left out of the Western media coverage. And I doubt they'll ever say anything about it. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory for those that don't know, because I don't trust the media. They don't represent all sides. They represent their own narrative in Western media. I do watch RT. Now, you might say, oh, well, that's backed by the Russian government. The Russian government put together RT specifically with the motivation of giving a balanced view of events around the world. If you spend any time watching RT, you'll notice that, for example, right now, they have both sides of the conflict giving their opinions, their views on everything that's happening. So it's not just the Russian side, it's both sides. And they are critical of the Russian government at times, and nothing happens. And if you think that I'm making this up, search on YouTube for Abby Martin. Now, Abby Martin started her career on RT, and she was critical of the Russian government. She did various documentaries on it, but she also spent a lot of time on what's called the Empire Files. Now, the Empire Files were amazing because she actually went through and found all the information that they weren't telling in Western media and reporting it. And she's American, she's not Russian. And actually, a lot of the people that work at RT are Americans. But anyway, yeah, that's pretty much the only media I watch nowadays, because it gives both sides and it gives history. So, history to the Ukrainian conflict. In 2014, the elected government was overthrown. Okay, so this was an elected government that won the vote by majority vote, but was Russian friendly. They didn't want anything to do with NATO. Sorry, noise, I'm going to pause. All right, the construction guys came. And basically didn't want anything to do with the West. They were very kind of dedicated to some of the memory of the Soviet Union and the relationship they had with Russia. Now, before I go further with that, I'll explain Crimea, since I mentioned the Soviet Union. So, Crimea was never invaded. It was never taken by Russia. During the time of the Soviet Union, when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, Crimea, of course, was part of the Soviet Union as well. So what happened was Crimea was basically assigned to the Ukrainian government to kind of look after, because for bureaucratic reasons. It was easier for the Ukraine to look after the Crimean kind of things than it was for Moscow, given the distance. So when the Soviet Union fell apart, of course, the last thing on their mind was, we need to make that administrative change that Crimea is part of Russia. So Crimea had a majority Russian population. Russia even had a military base there. Okay, so it's not like it was Ukrainian sovereign territory and Russia decided, we want this, and they went and took it. No, it was re-annexing a part of Russia that was not officially part of the Ukraine. Okay. So there was that whole, because it was really skewed in Western media coverage, that it was an invasion, that, you know, they took it back. And that is exactly the reason why none of the world powers intervened, because they knew that it was part of Russia, right? They could do nothing because legitimately it was part of Russia. Okay, so fast forward to 2014. So the president of Ukraine was basically overthrown in a coup, backed by the United States. And there's a lot of documentation to show this. The U.S. has, specifically the U.S., I think it was the Army, I think, they have a webpage that I found. I doubt I'd be able to find it again because I was watching a video. But anyway, they've invested $1.5 billion in Ukraine. So the United States has a lot of interest in Ukraine. They have a lot of investment there. And why? Why would it? Because it's strategic to their basic antagonization of Russia. They want to be able to basically circle Russia and China. They've already done it with China, with military bases and NATO bases. And Russia said, you know what? That's not cool. That's not acceptable. You know, we aren't putting missile bases or military bases on your borders. If anybody did, you would just go crazy. That would be automatic war, right? And but for some reason, it's okay if the U.S. and the European Union do it. So they put in the current president, who is or was a comedian. He was a television personality. He was a comedian, and they put him in as president. Why they chose him, I don't know. But so they put him in. Now, there's something you really have to understand about the Ukraine. There is a lot of discrimination in the Ukraine. There are open public displays of Nazism. People walking around with armbands with SS insignias or other insignias related to the old Nazi parties. So in 2014, when the Donbass region decided they wanted to declare independence, which has a large Russian population, Russian-speaking population, the Ukrainian government said, I don't think so. And so a civil war began. Now, you always hear in Western media that they're Russian-backed separatists. They weren't Russian-backed. They were Russian. And the thing is that even the Ukrainian people that live in those areas agreed that they wanted independence. They didn't want to be a part of the Ukraine. That, you know, that just the whole deal with the United States and everything, they're like, you know what, screw this, we don't want any part of it. You know, we see what's happening and we don't want to be a part of it. So the people of the Donbass region were being systematically killed. Now, one of the most prolific military groups of the Ukrainian army, it flies a Nazi flag. I can't remember the name of the group, the Alts or something like that. But they're the ones that mostly, they surrounded the Donbass region and They sit there with snipers and kill people, regular people. They're just walking around. They shell innocent people, their homes, schools. They've killed entire families. And this has gone on for 8 years. Now, the people of the Donbass region, at one point, I think in 2015, they were begging for Russia to intervene. Russia said, we can't do anything. This is an internal issue, but they did try diplomatic ways of getting the issue resolved. They appealed to the United Nations. They appealed to human rights, and they were just basically ignored. So for 8 years, the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian government, with full knowledge of what was going on, has been systematically killing the people of the Donbass region. Now, Russia basically, they were not happy with the situation, but, what could they do? Then all of a sudden, over the last few months, they start talking about the Ukraine becoming part of NATO, becoming part of the European Union. And there were agreements made years ago that NATO would not move any further east. I think the agreement was made in I can't remember. But anyway, it was confirmed. One of the German government came out the other day and they said, yeah, it's true. NATO did make assurances that they wouldn't move any further east. But since that time, they have moved into Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, right? Basically right on the front steps of Russia. And all this time, Russia has been like, we don't want to deal with this. Just, And then Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, all of a sudden said, now this was his big mistake. He said, we are going to start up our nuclear program again. And they have, or had, I think it was destroyed yesterday, a nuclear plant bigger than 10 times the size of Chernobyl. So they had every capability of being able to make nuclear weapons. And that was the last straw for Russia. Russia said, you know what? Screw this. We're sick and tired of it. And they went in to help the people of the Donbass region. They initially called it a humanitarian operation, which in a lot of senses it was, because Ukraine was killing people for 8 years and nobody said anything. It wasn't in the news at all. All the world governments just ignored all the requests by Russia to help these people, to intervene. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So 8 years later, more than 14,000 people killed in the Donbass region by the Ukrainian army. And so Russia stepped in. Now, of course, it wasn't completely humanitarian. They've also decided, you know what, we're going to take out the threats to our national security. Now, again, when we're talking of hypocrisy, why did the United States invade Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan? Right? Always citing that it's for their national security. right? Even though there's some of the poorest countries in the world, right? They have to go and destroy the country, and we're going to bring democracy to these countries. And how did they leave those countries? Right? Absolutely destroyed. And they said, oh, well, we're leaving. So Russia does something similar, and all of a sudden it's just like, because Russia has always been painted as the bad guys. I remember when I was a kid in school, we used to, the tensions were so high and during the Cold War era that we had to do these nuclear bomb drills. And as stupid as they were, it was really, it really left a very strong psychological imprint on us because we were so young. We would be taught to hide under our desks in case of nuclear war, a nuclear bomb went off somewhere close by, hiding in basements, all that thing. Like, we got the whole, 1980s version of Nuclear War 101, which was, now when we look back on it, was stupid, to say the least. But I lost my train of thought. So there's this hypocrisy. The United States, the European Union, the majority of the countries in the European Union, and England sent billions of dollars worth of military hardware, munitions, everything to the Ukraine. What did the Ukraine do? They started using it on the people in Donbass, right? And we start, if you start adding things up as to what the West was doing in the Ukraine to antagonize this whole situation, and you apply it to any other country, if X country did this to the United States, if X country did this to England, if X country did this to France or Germany, there would be all-out war, right? Or in this case, with them, it might be possible that there was actually a diplomatic solution because people listened to them, right? And but there would be war, right? So when they do all this to Russia, all of a sudden, for some reasons, it's acceptable. Nobody says anything. But when Russia reacts, everyone goes batshit crazy, right? And nothing about Russia, not all of the press conferences that Putin and Lavrov, the Secretary of State for Russia, have had, right? Nothing in the Western media. And they have done a lot, and they have explained it so simple that, even the least intelligent could go, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Now I understand. But Western media won't do that. The mainstream media doesn't do that because the mainstream media controls the point of view that we see things from, right? They don't do both sides. They do their side with their interests. That's why, there's CNN, the Clinton network, there's Fox News, which, funnily enough, I watched a couple with this Tucker Carlson, and Fox News is a bunch of lunatics, in my opinion, but he was right on certain things, and the BBC, Guardian, and all that, the most popular news outlets in the world, all report the same information. the same. So how can it be possible that they report the same when they're based in various countries, right? Like, things are a little weird in that sense. And so that just goes to show that the media has a coordinated system on the point of view and the information that they put out there, because they basically control the way people think about the world, right? We have the entire world's information. Well, not the entire, but we have a lot of information on the internet. More now than any other time in history, we have access to information. But nobody goes online to start researching. Well, not nobody, but the vast majority don't go and research the information. Go, hey, what's going on in Ukraine, right? Why is this whole situation in Russia going on, right? Like, what's the actual truth, right? And there's no critical thinking. People don't sit down and go, well, the United States did the same thing. Why was it okay for them, but when another country does it, it's all of a sudden a massive scandal, right? Like, it's the hypocrisy of everything is just, it blows my mind, and people just gobble it up, you know. And like I said, I'm not for war, because innocent people always die. But in this case, innocent people were dying anyway. 14,000 plus people, and nobody said boo. Okay? So when Russia says, you know what, enough is enough, you know, yeah, okay, in other cases, Haiti, Rwanda, parts of Africa, I think Zimbabwe was one of them, right? There were civil wars and genocide going on there. The United States, Canada, and other countries sent troops there to help train the military, and and UN watchdogs and all, the whole 9 yards were there to stop the genocides that were happening in some cases, not always. But in this case, when the Ukrainian government is working to wipe out a group of people because they want independence, rather than searching for a diplomatic recourse, right? And remember, Zelensky signed 2 agreements called the Minsk Agreements, 1 and 2. They were written up, signed by Russia, France, Germany, and the Ukraine. Okay? And those agreements were to recognize independence of the Donbass region and to not use any military force against the people of those regions, right? Among a whole bunch of other things, but those were the 2 main parts. And they ignored it. They ignored the entire agreements, right? So Russia worked its ass off to try and get some assurances, some security for the people in the Donbass region. They got France and Germany to kind of co-sign, and they were ignored, and France and Germany didn't say anything, didn't do anything. They didn't bring it up in the UN meetings, right? So, right, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing, right? Russia knows this is going on. It's happening on their doorstep. They're asking for help for these people because they know if they go and do it, well, as we know now, all the blowback. And when this whole thing started, Putin came out and he said, we aren't doing this for political reasons because there aren't any. We aren't doing this for economical reasons because there aren't any. We are going to suffer. We know this. We are doing this because thousands of people are being killed and they're going to continue being killed if somebody doesn't do anything, and nobody else is going to do anything. So that was the whole start. Okay? So regardless of whether you think, Russia's wrong for doing what they did, or what they're doing, or Ukraine's wrong, the whole, when you look at the whole picture, the person with their finger in the pie is the United States. They have progressively worked this whole situation up to where it is right now. And then all of a sudden Biden says, oh, we aren't putting any U.S. troops on the ground. Why? This was explained by an Indian military general. And he said, the reasons are actually quite simple. He said, right now this is a conflict between Ukraine and Russia. But if NATO jumps in, if the US or any other country jumps in, then it becomes a war, right? He differentiated between conflict and war. He said, they can't do anything because if they do, then Russia, being the lonely kid, is going to retaliate with full force. Right? When you've got however many countries all of a sudden ganging up on you, that's going to be a full-out war. He said, apart from that, he said, NATO right now is not psychologically nor economically ready for war. The pandemic has just taken the steam out of everyone. The European Union is not ready psychologically or economically for war. And he said the United States can't dip its finger in because the instant it does, it knows the consequences. Russia isn't one to go, we're sorry. When they decide to do something, they're going to do it. And if somebody else gets in the way, okay, well, you're part of it too. And this is not different from what any other country would do. Okay? The only difference is Russia has always been the baddie and basically has no allies that can help them on the world arena. They are close with China. They are close with India. I don't know who else, but they aren't militarily allied. They aren't allied. They're trading partners, basically. So these governments know this. The second they step in, Russia's just going to say, okay, let's see how this plays out. And nobody wants that. Nobody. Not the U.S. government, who loves their wars. Not NATO, who was made specifically during the Cold War to be a reactive, ready and able force against Russia should war break out. Right? So that's why they were created. I lost my train of thought again. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, and also remember Russia's a nuclear power. And I said, you can only poke the bear so much before it's going to go nuts and rip you apart. And that's basically what's happened. Is, the United States has been poking at them for a while, quite a while. And recently it's gone from poke, and now it's like poke. And Russia's like, fuck, leave us alone. And they say, you know what, screw you guys, because anything that we do or don't do, you put sanctions on us. We're always guilty of something even when we don't do anything. So there is no win for us not doing anything, because it's the same as if we do something, right? Maybe not quite as extreme, because they've cut them off from SWIFT. And, I understand why they do this. They do this to make the people, they did the exact same thing with Venezuela. Okay? They sanctioned the hell out of them so that the people suffer and hopefully would turn against the government. So that's why they've cut off the banks. They're just trying to demolish the Russian economy so the people suffer, and then they throw out their government. But what they don't count on is that the approval rating of Putin before this was 60%. Okay, before this. Since this whole thing started, it's gone up to 72%. Okay, so Putin is he's basically counted as a hero in Russia, right? If you're ever interested, look up the documentary on Putin. Very interesting. And I would say that he is probably the most qualified person to be a president than any United States president has. So, but yeah, okay, I got that off my chest. Yeah. I've got an ear infection. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is both the subtleties of autism, and maybe are we too easy on ourselves? Well, I'll explain that, because what do you mean too easy? Too easy on ourselves in the fact that, we tend to coddle ourselves. And, I understand we need to look after ourselves and things, but in some cases it's like, I don't feel comfortable. And we don't just go, you know what, I've got to suck it up. You got to have some thick skin and just deal with it. And then when you get home or whatever, and this is kind of, it's a internal debate I've had since I got my diagnosis was, late diagnosed autistics, we've had to basically learn to survive, not knowing that we're autistic, just thinking that we're different, and just doing it. We suck it up. I don't feel good today. Like I'm burnt out. I get home from work and I start crying and depression and everything. Okay, I've got to get my shit together and, do it again tomorrow. Whereas, I think those that are diagnosed early on in life, maybe tend to be coddled by their parents. They're maybe put with therapists to help with communication skills and all that stuff. So late diagnosed, we've had to, bulldoze through it. Whereas I think the early diagnosed, they have the hand up where they get the tools. They're given tools, not in all cases, of course, but being aware, they can, noise canceling headphones and the whole other 9 yards to help them cope. So, once we get diagnosed, of course, we've got to go, oh, okay, well, that's why that happens. And that's why, I hear that noise and I want to rip my skin off, or, I get depressed and I start crying, or, all these other things that happen, or I count, and, all this stuff that before we were like, fuck, I'm weird. Why do I do all this and nobody else seems to? Right? And we're left with that eternal question. So once we get diagnosed, it's like light bulb comes on, and then I think we tend to overcompensate. At least I know that I started doing it. I started overcompensating because, I know that, for example, loud noises or high-pitched noises just drive me insane. I'm very sensitive to light, and social situations just wipe me out. And I haven't suffered too much over the pandemic for not being able to socialize, because I'm quite happy being at home. You give me a computer with an internet connection, I'm good. Or books, I'm good. But when I've got to go out and socialize, that's where, I started kind of coddling myself. Where I was like, my wife, at first she was like, rolling her eyes all the time, like, oh, you're such a drama queen. And then after a while, she's like, okay, you want to go out? If you don't, that's fine. I'm like, no, we'll go out, because I also try to remember that I'm married. My wife is not autistic. So she's going to want to go out and socialize. These are the sacrifices I have to make for my relationship. It's not all me. And, I have some friends that they know that I'm autistic. We sat and talked, they ask questions and things like that. And so when we're with them, they ask me, are you doing okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Or, I'll be like, I'm ready to go home. It just gets to a point where I'm like, no, yeah, I'm not enjoying this. Or the husband of the couple, well, let's go out for a smoke. So we go out for a smoke and kind of, give me 5-10 minutes of just time to relax, and then we go back, and yeah. But I have the hardest time with, of course, with strangers. So because there's no conversation, basically. If we go to something like that, my wife generally knows somebody, so she's talking with them. I don't know anybody. So like my daughter, so I play with her, I'll talk with her, and that's what I do while we're there. And if she goes off and plays or something like that, then I'm just kind of sat there like, And I just kind of retreat back into my head, and I'm like, you know, and but you know, going, oh no, I can't do social situations. That doesn't help us. You know, of course, social situations are a little, they're stressing, they're difficult, and we've got to recover later. But we have to push ourselves. Right? We can't just go, I can't do this. That, you know, there are people who have chronic illness, fibromyalgia, for example, where they hurt, they're in pain 24/7, but they still get up, they still go to work, they still do everything they have to do. You know, they're in physical pain 24/7, and they still get up and they do everything that they have to do. And they don't, well, the vast majority don't complain. You know, so, you know, I think that we're kind of obliged to ourselves, to our families, to our partners, to our children, to go, okay, you know, I know I'm going to have to, you know, recover from this later, but I've got to do it. You know, and it makes me wonder if that's part of the reason why so many autistics are unemployed. It's because they're like, oh, you know, I can't, I get too burnt out, and, you know, they just don't want to. You know, it's not that they can't, because you can, you just have to learn to deal with the consequences afterwards. So, you know, and late identified autistics, we've done that our entire lives. So all of a sudden when we have our diagnosis, we can't go, oh, I can't, because we know we can. We've done it our whole lives, right? So there's that, you know, the difference between, or the fine balance between maintaining self-care and making sure we're not babying ourselves, right? Because we need to live. We can't just sit in a corner all day and, you know, an office all day, or a room in your house. It's my office. Well, was. And just go, oh no, everything outside is too bad for me. You know, that's why, you know, there are videos, lots of videos out there of things to help you deal with going out, noise canceling headphones, for example. Sunglasses if you're light sensitive, if you have sensitivity to fabrics, for example, you know how to deal with that over time. You've learned how to deal with these things. So there shouldn't be any real excuse once you get diagnosed to go, oh, well, I can't. Yes, you can. You just, now you feel you have an excuse to use to not. And I'm not diminishing the difficulties of autism at all. What I'm saying is that when we've done it our entire lives, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, you're autistic. And you go, oh, well, that explains a lot. And then you go, oh, well, you know, then there's this and this. And then you start to baby yourself. You know, oh, I'm sensitive to noise, so you always wear your noise canceling headphones. You went your entire life without them. Yes, you had to deal with, so, you know, the agitation, stress, anxiety, all that, because of those sensitivities. But you can do it. So I guess that's the point that I'm trying to say. Trying to make, if you know, if you've done it for so many years, and then somebody says you have autism, And then you start going, well, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. You can. If you don't, it's because you choose not to. Okay? Now, if you've gone your whole life not being able to do something, of course, you can't all of a sudden go, oh, yeah, I can. I'm going to do it. I mean, in some cases you probably can, but I mean, if, for example, if you've been nonverbal your entire life and all of a sudden go, I'm going to talk. No, it doesn't work that way. So, yeah, I just, and I understand as well that even for me, sometimes things are just so overwhelming that you do a downward spiral. When you overextend yourself for days on end, yes, you're going down and down and down, depression, you don't want to do anything, you just want to sleep, you don't eat, like the whole 9 yards. And, I understand that. And that's why it's necessary to have a self-care plan. Sorry, if I sound funny, it's because I'm getting these teeth replaced, so my S's are a little funny. Now, Carol Jean from Mind Your Autistic Brain, or Social Autie, she does a lot of stuff about self-care. So, there are resources out there and ways to help us create a self-care plan while maintaining an active life. Right? I've never been one of these people to go, well, I can't because, whatever. I'll go, oh, I'll give it a try. I'll see if I can. And if I can, great. If I can't, at least I try. But I'm not going to go, oh, I can't. If I've tried it before and I know I can't, I'll even still give it a try, because maybe the first time, I did something wrong and that's why I couldn't do it. So maybe trying it this time, it'll work, So saying goes, third time's a charm. So these, all of these things we need to create a balance, between functioning and self-care. Now, as well, there is the, in a lot of cases, for, I guess, all of us, I would imagine, that the signs of something that affect us, right? So we have these, for example, the auditory sensitivities. It's very obvious. We can figure that out pretty easy. But there are others that are much more subtle, and it's really hard to pin them down, because there'll be days where we're just like, well, for me, days where I'm just like, I don't feel right, but I don't know why. Like, I slept well, I ate, I'm not sick, right? We haven't gone out, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know what it is. And these are the subtleties of autism, and I think they're probably the most difficult for us to deal with, because we are so conscious or vigilant of everything else. When it's subtle, it can kind of get left by the roadside. And it can end up being that those subtle things are the ones that are pushing us over the edge, not the big things. So those subtleties are, I said, they're damn near difficult to, impossible to pinpoint because they are so subtle. You know, to be honest, yesterday I was thinking about it, going like, you know what, this is what is bothering me. It's very subtle. It's not, you know, one of those things where it's like, it's this. It was like very, very subtle, and I was like, you know what, that could really screw with your head, because, you know, you're trying to figure it out, and outside of that moment, maybe you can't figure it out, or it's gone, and you're like, oh, why? I don't get it. And so these, I think that, well, I don't know, I'm just throwing things out here. I think kind of what we need to do would be to, you know, just put ourselves in on auto, and, you know, the headphones, glasses, whatever we normally do for the you know, the obvious stuff, just do it. And then we need to start paying attention to the tinier things, you know. What was it? I got really upset with my wife last night because our cat is sick. I don't know what happened to him, but he wasn't doing good yesterday. So my wife brought home some medication to give him. And if you ever try to give medication to a cat, that's like trying to, I don't know, tickle a blender while it's turned on. But she had all the medication out. I said, well, what is this that we give him? And she said, oh, well, it's for his stomach. It's a get rid of parasites. Like, well, and that was the only one that we were actually able to get into him before he just turned into a helicopter of claws and teeth. And I said, well, where's the freaking antibiotic? Like, that's the most important, right? And she goes, that is an antibiotic. I said, well, you said that's for parasites. She said it's an antiparasitic and an antibiotic at the same time. And I'm like, well, why didn't you say that's the antibiotic? That was the question. What is this? Like, is this the antibiotic? Yes. No, it's antiparasitic. Well, where's the fucking antibiotic? Well, that's the antibiotic. Right, so not so subtle really, but people's choice of words when they communicate is just sometimes really like, why would you say that instead of something more simple and easy to understand, like more clear? And so that's something that really bothers me, is the way that people, I guess the words they choose to communicate sometimes. For example, if I say, what was it? I said to my daughter the other day, I know, to Sylvia, in Spanish you say, after you finish eating, I asked her if she was, full or if she wanted more. So I said, well, ¿estás satisfecho? ¿Quieres más? And she said, no. So, well, no what? No, you're not full, or no, you don't want more. Right? Like, she's like, no, I don't want any more. I'm like, okay, well, I guess you're full then. If you're not full, then, right? So just those tiny little things where it's like, well, you gave me a yes or no answer to a question that requires more than a yes or no answer, or at least a 2-part yes, no, right? Yes, I'm full. No, I don't want any more. Thank you. Right. Yeah, the subtle things, I think, are really the things that do us the most damage and require the most awareness, because they are so difficult to pinpoint, and they can do some really sudden damage to us mentally, because we don't know where it's coming from if we can't pinpoint it, right? If it's a fleeting thing, then it's like, what was that? Like, why? What was going on? And if we're able to pinpoint it, then we get to add that to our catalog of things like, oh, okay, well, now I know that. And at least for me, when something sudden like that just kind of gets me, I get really frustrated because I don't know what it was. Like, why, I don't understand. I'm confused, and I'm trying to kind of process how I'm feeling and figure it out, as well as pinpoint the why. And so then anybody who communicates with me at that point in time is going to throw me off, and I get angry if they do, because I'm trying to figure this out. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, fucking, I'm trying to figure something out. Now right? Like, I need to focus on this because I can't easily identify how I'm feeling. And when it's something like that, something really, really subtle, I've got to kind of sift through what I was doing and say, okay, I was doing this, la, 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 and kind of follow the path and see if that's it. No. Then the next thing, and follow the path, and no. Right? And if somebody interrupts me during that time, then I lose the whole train of thought, and it's done. I have to wait until the next time. Yeah. There's something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. So, yeah. I will leave it off here because I've gone for over an hour. Thanks for listening in. And as always, you can, if you're watching me on YouTube, you can find me as well on Anchor podcast, Anchor FM. If you want to see the previous podcasts that I've done. And if you're listening to me on Anchor or Spotify, you can find me on YouTube, and as well now on Odyssey, Odyssee. If you want something that isn't so heavily censored, I guess. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you're all doing well. Feel free to drop me a message either on Facebook at Peeling Back the Mask podcast page, or on Instagram at Peeling Back the Mask _between the words, peeling _back _the _mask Instagram. And yeah, I always like hearing from people. Again, this is my my opinion, my insights, or just thinking out loud. I am not going to argue with anyone online about my points of view. These are my points of view, and it's okay if you have something different. That's fine. That's the world. And don't think that if your way of thinking about things is contrary to mine, that sending me a message about how I'm wrong is going to do anything. It's not. I'll read it and delete it, because that's fine. You have your point of view, I have mine. So why do you feel the need to tell me that you don't agree with my point of view? Disagree with it and move on. Right? Like, it's another thing I want to talk about is this whole fucking cancel culture. And just like, you can't have an opinion contrary to anybody else nowadays. It's like, if your opinion is contrary to the narrative, the popular narrative, then they try and cancel you, and that just gets rid of any kind of meaningful conversation about different topics and different points of view. Like, that's what it used to be. We'd sit and discuss our points of view, and we would agree on some points, we wouldn't agree on some points, but we could have that discussion. And now you can't even have that discussion. And it really pisses me off, because it's just killing our ability to freely communicate our thoughts and ideas with others without being afraid of some kind of backlash because it's not popular. So, but in my case, I don't really give a fuck. If you don't agree, you don't agree. Fine. If you agree, great. We're on the same page. But I'm not going to change the way I think or do things because somebody all of a sudden just comes out and starts ranting at me about what I said was wrong or how I think is wrong. According to who? To you? Well, who are you? Are you an authority on anything? Right? Like, if you're just another person like me, well, then your opinion is about as valuable as mine. So take that into account. Right? Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop my rant. Take care, everyone. Hope you're doing well, and we'll see you next time.